Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, YouTube, as well as the mobile app. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You could also hit us up on social media, hashtag Giants Chat. He is at Giants WFAN. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. And we are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So the Giants entering the bye on a 7-game skid after falling to the Patriots on Monday Night Football last night, 33-15. Special teams clearly a huge storyline. So Paul and I will provide some takeaways before we open up the dialogue on other fronts. And Paul, that's where I want to start, because this was really the first game, at least from a big picture perspective, where it just didn't seem as if the Giants were going to be in the thick of things as the game progressed once that first quarter unraveled. Whereas every other game this season, regardless of the result, you would say, all right, the Giants have been in it. They've kept themselves competitive.
Correct.
Last night was the first time that it was really overall a non-competitive game. And while you could point the finger at a variety of different facets, it's hard to overlook special teams. And before I get your reaction, I just want to go over starting field positioning for New England. To me, defined the first half. The opening kickoff, they had a huge return for 39 yards. They start at their own 47. It stalls out in the red zone, but they get 3 points. Then the punt return for a touchdown, 94 yards for Marcus Jones. Then after that, the Giants punted, so you had actually decent field positioning that the Giants put the Patriots in, and no surprise, they actually forced them to punt. But then after that, it became just a theme where the starting field positioning was humongous for the Patriots. It was either a short field as a result of a turnover on downs. You had the botched field goal attempt. You had the fourth down conversions that did not pan out, and New England made the Giants pay time and time again.
The Patriots all season long have made a living playing clean, sound, fundamental football. They did it again last night. I mean, the botched field goal, at that point, it's 17-7. Okay? The Giants get that field goal, it's a 17-10 one-score game. Now, I'm not going to suggest the Giants come back and win the game. They were beaten at all three phases throughout the entire evening. This was not their night. From the opening kickoff, the Patriots were foaming at the mouth. Vrabel clearly wanted to prove to a national television audience that the Patriots deserve to have the best record in the NFL, regardless of how soft their schedule is, regardless of how their red zone offense and defense is very poor, blah, 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 blah. He was tired of hearing about how they were a paper lion. And if you listen to the quotes or read the quotes from the Patriots and him after the game, he made it a point to have his Patriots sky high and souped up, and to show the NFL that you better start thinking about us as a team that's going to go far into the playoffs. This was, in my opinion, this was an absolute statement game by the Patriots. They showed it from the first snap, and that's why it was not the Giants' night. I don't think they would have come back and won the game. But had Koo been able to connect on the field goal, had the snap been clean, and had he kicked it, and it's 17-10, maybe you got a chance to make that game competitive. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But from that point forward, the dam broke. It was Niagara Falls. And it went all downhill.
Yeah, because you gave the football to the Patriots at the Giants' 45-yard line after the botched field goal attempt, and then they were able to turn it into a touchdown, probably one of the best passes that Drake May made to Kyle Williams in the left corner of the end zone, where it was either going to be an incomplete pass or it was going to be a touchdown, which is exactly how it played out. And now, to your point, instead of maybe 17-10, all of a sudden it's now 24-7, and that's how quickly a game can change.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I think, you have to take into account here is that the Pats, they've got this momentum going right now that once they seem to get that ball rolling, they don't give it up. They just don't give it up. And we've seen some games have some ebb and flow. This game didn't have an ebb and flow. Even when the Giants had a chance to take some of that flow, and they didn't do it. And the Patriots just kept pushing the pedal to the metal. It's my opinion, and you can disagree if you like, as they rolled through the second half of this game, had they wanted to, I think they could have piled it up even more. I really do. I think it was that one-sided.
Yeah, I don't know if I would classify to say that they took their foot off the pedal, because if you saw in the second half, Vrabel was keeping his offense on the field on a fourth down or two, and he had them go for it. So I think they had the intent that we still want to put as many points on the board. You know, maybe when it got to a fourth and down situation, he said, listen, let's not roll the dice. Let's at least get some padding. Attempt a field goal. Remember, there was one missed field goal in the second half, so they could have easily had 36 points. But I still saw
the touchdown taken back, too.
Correct, the one to Hunter Henry, where there were offsetting penalties. But I would think that from watching that game, Mike Vrabel still was emphasizing to his team, hey, this game is not necessarily over, even though it may seem as if we're up comfortably. And I thought they did keep an aggressive pursuit in the second half. I just don't think the Giants could match it in any manner, and that was problematic. Also, given the fact that this was one of the first times we talked about off the top, Paul, where the Giants were playing from behind, right? They've actually been playing ahead and have not been able to maintain leads or have been right within striking distance. They got behind by double digits, and what had the Giants done the last 2 weeks that I had been mentioning? They ran the ball nearly 40 times in each of the last two games, right? 38, 39 respectively. Now, they finished with 27 runs, and Singletary we saw in the second half, but the flow of the game doesn't give you the luxury to continually pound the football. So that also proved to be problematic, where whether Kafka intended or not, it was going to be a pass-happy game in the second half, just based on what the situation called for. And the strength right now of the Giants is up front with the offensive line playing fairly well, being able to run block, and then being able to stay in manageable third downs as a result of a variety of different running backs. That luxury was not afforded them last night because of how quickly they got down and had to play catch-up.
And the only two chunk plays were the touchdowns. Singletary on the direct snap when he ran 22 yards around the right side. And that was a really nice play and certainly an exciting play, and it was executed very well. And Slayton did a really nice job.
30 yards.
To run through the secondary on that catch and run for 30 yards. Ironically, you talk about two guys who are really pros, very well liked by the staff, very well liked by their teammates. For Slayton, that was his first touchdown catch of the season.
I tweeted that out as it happened,
Okay?
Hard to believe a little bit.
His last one was against the Colts, the second to last game of last year. And for Singletary, that was his season high in yardage. 68, I think, was his number last night.
Yeah.
He had not run for that many yards in a game since week 2 last year against Washington. Now, of course, Tyrone Tracy pretty much took that job.
Opportunity wasn't there.
Singletary got hurt. Tracy took the job and ran with it. But, these are two guys who, they were the light glimmer of hope in the flashlight in terms of positivity coming out of that game.
Well, interestingly, speaking of numbers and at-bats, as I like to call it, in each of the last 3 weeks, Singletary has had double-digit carries. Prior to that, Paul, he never had a game with at least 10. 8 was his high. So you're seeing, all right, you're using him more. He has been able to take advantage as a result of the play up front. So it's just the fact that he now has been afforded a chance to capitalize on these additional carries. He was third on the depth chart, right? You had Scadaboo, you had Tracy, and now all of a sudden with both of those guys banged up, and Tracy, it's being labeled as a hip injury. We'll see coming out of the bye where he stands. Singletary's number was called again. He has familiarity given his ties to Dable going back to Buffalo, and he's been with Kafka and so forth. So it's no surprise that they would turn to him. And I think it's also a product of, even though he's been in the league for several years, bit of fresh legs now he's operating with, right, Paul? Because there wasn't a lot of wear and tear on his body. I mean, think about it. You'd have to go 2 games combined, San Francisco and Chicago, to equate to the total amount of carries that he had in the Green Bay game. And then you'd have to take 3 or 4 games prior to that to get to what he did in the Lions game. So he's probably feeling as if he's a second-year player where he's at, right, at this stage in the season, just because the usage hasn't been there.
I'm glad for him because he's soft-spoken. You know, he doesn't make a lot of noise. Certainly never complains about his situation and his role on the team. He just goes out there and does what he's told, does his job. Again, we hear the term pros pro all the time. Class act. And, you know, I've talked to him several times after losses. He always handles himself in a top-of-the-line manner. So I'm glad for him to get a little more chance to play. And whatever happens from now till the end of the season for him, if he wants to keep playing in the NFL, I hope that there's a spot for him next year, whether or not it's on the Giants or with somebody else. I think he's a quality NFL guy to have in your locker room.
Yeah, and still can be productive depending on how you utilize him. You're not going to bring him in to be the number one back.
No.
He can be a complementary weapon. I think there's a place for him in the NFL. Few other things I want to get into just in terms of decision-making and plays in the game, and you and I were talking about this even before the show. Kafka has proven to be very aggressive since he took over as the head man in the first 2 games that he was the coach. And it just seemed a little bit out of character. And he did address this after the game when they had the possession late in the second quarter. It was 27-7, and they're set up for a 4th and 1. And they ultimately decide to bring out Jamie Gillen to punt. And the Patriots, boy, you want to talk about textbook how to run a 1-minute drill with 1 timeout left? Wow. Drake May, 5 plays, 67 yards. They salvaged that 1 timeout to help set up the field goal late. Whether you have any rooting interest, I mean, that's the film you want to review in terms of how to take advantage of a small period of time and still wind up walking away with points on the board and, leaving no time left for the opposition to get possession. They kicked that field goal. That was the last play of the first half. So whether it was a make or a miss, that was going to be it. I think New England deserves a lot of credit, but I want to flip the script here to the Giants.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay.
Busted coverage in the right flat. Stevenson goes
the wide open.
Yards.
Sure. Okay, but listen.
That's a bust.
Well,
that has nothing to do with the Patriots schematically. That was a busted coverage, and they got a chunk play of over 35 yards out of it. Without that play, they're not pulling off what you're talking about.
Well, they still could have very well gotten a field goal opportunity, depending on what would have happened. I'm not saying they would have scored a touchdown, but I'm just talking about how they managed the clock. They waited till late
let's not
to get the timeout.
Let's not gloat too much over it, because there was clearly a busted coverage that really was the big chunk of it.
I mean, listen, you're not apologizing. Hold on. You gave a whole dissertation, okay, at the beginning about Mike Vrabel wanted to prove that the schedule, may have been not the toughest.
They took advantage of it.
All right. I'm not going to sit here and apologize for broken down coverage from the opposing team.
They took advantage of absolutely every flaw in the Giants' armor. It was ugly, to be honest.
Well, and one of the things they did take advantage here, and this was my main point, was they took over, at their own 23. So you figured even though you didn't go for it on 4th and 1, you're still not putting your defense in a precarious spot. That wasn't the issue. It was just if you would have picked up the 1 yard, what that could have done to help extend the drive, maybe milk the clock. You walk away with maybe a scoring opportunity, and New England doesn't get a field goal. And Kafka, he in his press conference did say it was one of those things that he went back and forth with in the moment. He admitted and he acknowledged that it wasn't cut and dry. He was going back and forth, and ultimately field positioning was what he determined influenced him to say, hey, we're going to punt as opposed to go for it and then give New England even more favorable field positioning because of what transpired earlier in the first half.
Well, also, he knew he was getting the third quarter kickoff.
Sure. Yep.
I'm sure that was part of it.
No,
absolutely. Even though he didn't go into that detail.
But I guess my one counter to that would have been, but maybe here's an opportunity to double dip. you get the ball right to start the third quarter. If you actually do hold on to the ball, maybe you get 2 scoring opportunities. So I think there's 2 ways of looking at it, at least through the lens of how Kafka was thinking about it. But that was it was interesting to me only because he's proven to be a guy that's going to keep his foot on the pedal and be aggressive. Remember, he was answering questions against the Lions the previous week where many people were saying you should have taken the field goal. And he said no. We were in this position multiple times during the season, and I talked about this on last Wednesday's show, and I had no issue with that aggressive approach. It didn't work out, but that doesn't necessarily make the decision ill-informed. So if you look at how he's gone through his decision-making process, I was a little bit surprised that he didn't go for it on 4th and 1.
That's fair. And I appreciate his honesty after the game, saying that it was a close call. He actually thought that both options were viable. So, look, again, whatever happens on that play, I just think it was the Patriots' night all around. I don't know that the Giants necessarily were going to be in position to win this game. I thought New England hammered them. They did what they wanted to do.
They were outplayed in every facet. Special teams, I think, is the one at the forefront just because of the field positioning. And remember, it wasn't just the botched field goal. It was also, and hopefully Gunnar Olszewski will recover. I mean, that was a really hard hit he took, but, that fumble also set them up.
They destroyed his helmet.
Yeah.
Hard?
Sure.
Destroyed his helmet.
Now, it's important to note, and this was discussed also on the broadcast because I'm sure a lot of people saw the helmet-to-helmet hit, and there was no doubt about it. It was a helmet-to-helmet hit.
Oh, yeah.
But on that play, because he's an established runner by that point, okay?
It's legal.
And this is maybe issues that you could have with how the NFL rules are written, but that was officiated correctly, that it was not a personal foul based on how it is broken down in terms of where he is on that special teams return. I just wanted to clarify that because I'm sure a lot of viewers saw that and said, how was a flag not thrown? Well, there was a reason why it wasn't.
That's one of those plays where the optics are bad and your feeling makes you sick to your stomach. It's like this guy just got absolutely smashed to the head. But legally, the rules of the league say that that's an okay play, and you have to live by that. Now, whether or not you like it, that's another story. You don't have to like it. But as we've all said, it's very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to legislate helmet-to-helmet hits on the basis that the game is played so quickly, so fast.
Bang, bang, play.
Angles are very, very difficult to ascertain geometrically in terms of a player's intent. Very, very difficult to do. So it's a rough game, and there are going to be inherent plays that are going to be ugly, that will turn your stomach, that will make you wince, but are also going to be legal. And that's just it.
And that brings us to 2 other plays that I want to address before we open up the lines. And, of course, Jackson Dart, first game back after missing the last 2 due to a concussion. And he took some hits in this game. Harold Landry was the first hit, though to me there was nothing wrong with it. He slid. Dart gave himself up, and Landry basically hurtled over him.
Yeah.
And I know people want to break down every frame by frame. First of all, the officials don't have the luxury. They're not X-Men, okay? They don't have super elements in terms of their vision. They can't process things. It's like slow motion replay that we're seeing when we're all on our couches. So I didn't have an issue with that play. And then the Ellis hit on the sideline. It was a hard hit. There's no doubt about it. But you watch the replay, Dart was still in bounds when it happened. And again, textbook definition of a legal hit.
Yes, that's true. The textbook says that's a legal hit. Was it unnecessary? Was it overzealous? I totally agree that it was unnecessary and that it was overzealous. But I also totally agree that it was legal within the framework of the NFL rules. In that case, it's one of those plays that can be both. It's legal, but it also makes you wince because you feel like, oh, wow. I mean, did he really have to launch himself into the neck and shoulder area and send the guy horizontally into the air and several feet out of bounds? No, I think it's pretty clear that he easily could have shoved him out of bounds. He could have hit him in the midsection and put him out. He could have gone for his legs and knocked his legs out. He did not have to hit him coming 150 miles an hour horizontally across the field and literally launch into him and send him flying. He did not have to do that. But is it legal? Yes, it is legal. So
it was one of those plays, and I told you this off air, where I thought the optics were a lot worse than perhaps the actual play, because he did take flight dart, and you could tell his response to the hit. But once again, the job of the officials, and it's not an ideal formula, but this goes back to the play we were talking about with Olszewski. They need to interpret the play in real time, very fast, based on the written rule, okay? That's their job. They're not supposed to take intent into consideration. It's not their job to get into the head of the player and what the player was thinking, whether or not they were looking to hurt. It's the written rule that they're supposed to know backwards and forwards and applying that to what they're seeing in real time. That's the process of officiating. But this is also the human element of the game. But I actually thought, under those circumstances that we just laid out, they did a pretty good job, because, Paul, you put anybody else in that situation, bang, bang, play, that is hard in that moment to know whether or not. The officials had every reason to throw the flag on the dart hit. They had every excuse in the book to throw that flag as a personal foul because of how Dart took flight and how hard he was hit. They had every reason to throw the flag, but the official in the moment noticed that Dart was still in play, and that's hard to officiate, I would argue.
Well, to your point, and this is a very little known fact, and I don't know about the television broadcast because obviously I was at the game. But in 2024, the NFL put a new rule in place to specifically address this kind of play. If a player gets plastered, if you will, hammered, crushed, right along the sideline, they use expedited replay to potentially pick up a flag. So in other words, in the interest of safety, the official has the room to throw the flag if he thinks it's close enough that the player may or may not have touched the sideline. He's got the ability under the expedited replay rule, and this only started in 2024. Throw the flag, they kick it upstairs real quick, expedited replay says, okay, we've reviewed the replay. He is within the field of play. He was not out of bounds. He was not going out. We can pick up the flag. Now, you can't add a flag with this rule.
After
you
the fact,
can only pick it up. So to your point, if you want to err on the side of caution to promote safety and to protect the player, you could have argued, and maybe in many cases, an official would have thrown that flag. I think we've all heard the stories and we've all seen them where some of your Bradys and your Mahomeses and some of your superstar quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, they've been in that spot and the flag comes out. And in other cases, maybe it doesn't. There's that whole judgment thing, which makes it really sticky, and that's why the league put this rule in 2024. If you do it, we're going to expedite the review and we'll pick it up if you were, let's just say, a little too cautious and you tried to blur the line of the rule book.
Well, judgment is a great term, Paul. I couldn't have said it better because it is a judgment call. That's what all of these things are. It's more of a reason why I've never been in favor of pass interference being reviewed, because that's also a judgment call, and you're going to create more controversy. On a related note, real quickly before we open up the lines, I don't know how much you caught, because obviously after the game you're roaming around in the locker room, but Dart was peppered with a lot of questions about his style of play, Paul, after the game. And I don't want to say it was different than maybe other press conferences, but he got, he fought back, pushed back, I think is fair, right? In terms of the narratives that he needs to do a better job of giving himself up, not taking hits. And the point he made was, he says, listen, if you go back and you watch me back in my high school career and in college, this is who I am. This is my DNA. I'm going to fight for the extra yardage. I'm going to
specifically on first down, to get a first down.
Correct.
That's his situational asterisk.
Yeah.
I will always try to get the first down.
Correct. And then he also brought up, and he had said this previously, he had said the Bears hit that he took, what led to the concussion, was because the ball was being bobbled and he couldn't brace himself. So he said that that was more of a rare occurrence as opposed to when he's taken other hits in the field of play, he's been able to protect himself.
He told us during the week that that concussion against Chicago was when he actually hit the ground. He said the hit did not cause it.
But the fact that he couldn't brace himself
Right.
for absorbing the ground.
Right.
Yeah. So I just thought that was a little bit interesting because I thought we saw a little bit more emotion out of Dart maybe in comparison to other press conferences. Not to say that he was combative. I don't want to misinterpret it, but we did see him get, a little bit more fiery in terms of not just accepting what is being painted out there. That's his perspective. I mean, you could still argue when he's running up the sideline, maybe you run out of play 2 yards earlier and you don't give Ellis an opportunity to put a hit on you. You live to see another down. It's not going to make or break the Giants' offense. But I will defend him. The play with Landry, he was giving himself up. He was sliding. So
he absolutely
you can't
did.
really criticize Dart and say, oh, that was an unnecessary hit. No, he was in the process, and Landry obviously was in the process of going for the ball and trying to hit the quarterback. So those two things can happen simultaneously, and what are you supposed to tell Dart to do?
The one flag was on Jalen Hawkins on the double team against Theo Johnson on the sideline.
Yeah.
That went under the unnecessary roughness.
Well, because there was
foul.
clearly helmet-to-helmet contact on that one.
And, and by the way, Theo stood up, and so did a couple of other guys, stood up for Dart on that hit.
Yeah, a lot of the offensive linemen, Runyon and Van Roten, I mean, all those guys. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for doing that. You like to see that. Now, in the moment, they're not going back and looking at the replay to determine whether or not Dart was still in play. So I have no issue with teammates coming to the defense of others. I'll go back to, not to get off topic, and Hard Knocks actually is starting up again tonight on the NFC East front, but when Mike Smith was the head coach of the Falcons, Paul, real quickly, the Falcons were on Hard Knocks. He starts off the season in training camp. He puts film up. This always stood out to me. It was Matt Ryan on the ground after getting sacked. No one helped Matt Ryan get up. None of the offensive linemen, none of the teammates. And Mike Smith, he starts off training camp. He goes, we're not going to have a team where our quarterback is on the ground and you don't walk over and assist him up.
Right.
And that always stood out to me, and I thought about that in the context of last night, and this was maybe a little bit deeper, but it's just getting in the process of guys on the ground, you help him up, and you get in that habit where you're going to come to the defense, and it builds. I hate culture, okay? It's a pet peeve of mine. I'm not going to use that, okay? But
I don't like that word either.
So I'll use routine, okay? Can we agree? Routine of this is what we do when we're on the football field. We come to the defense of others. We make sure that everybody's in good shape playing and play out. So the routine, I thought, was very well executed.
I think I totally agree with what you just said. I like that.
You can adopt it, just like the spider web. I borrowed it here or there, okay? The quicksand of, you know what? We'll let you fill in the blank. We can be in a giving mood
layers
on
of the
both
onion?
fronts. Yes. I'll leave the foods to you. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward. Let's go to James in Georgia here with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, James? What do you got for us?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
You're all right. What's on your mind?
Last time I called, I was in Greece, and I was been meaning to call back ever since, right before we beat the Eagles, and I've been meaning to call back ever since, just to, say that, everything that's been going on with the team and the firings that came, a week or two too late on all fronts. Just a lot going on with this team that needs to be corrected. I actually called today just to I know during the off season, one of the topics was how do we close the gap between just teams in our division, the quickest way to the playoffs and all that. I don't know. This season being a loss, I just called to, vent my frustrations on the gap, just in general in the NFL, and the broadcast team last night actually stole some of my thunder for the day on how we have to get the right guy in here at general manager and at head coach, because in the same time period, that we have gone to a Super Bowl with the Patriots. The Patriots have seemed to turn themselves around, and we are still in the dumpster. If you want to compare yourself to more than just the NFC East and look as a whole, John Mara liking to play his fantasy football. We're grossly failing, and it's not because we pick from a different talent pool. Maybe the scouting team, your actual team evaluators might be missing on evaluating who they're bringing into the building, but we all pick from the same talent pool. The draft and free agents change hands. One guy, he could be on your team and then go to another team and be a superstar. I'm just calling today to say how important it is to get the right guy, the right guy in the building.
Yeah, well, and also developing on that front too. I mean, New England, and I saw the broadcast, and James, we want to get to a number of calls, so we'll let you go on that point. But one of the things that they were pointing out, Paul, because obviously you were at the game, they put up a graphic of all the free agent signings that the Patriots made, and they hit on a bunch of them this year. A lot of those guys came in and made an impact, and then like Travion Henderson in the draft class, who now is getting more playing time, and how both of those facets, along with Mike Vrabel taking over and Josh McDaniels coming back as OC, it was a combination of a variety of reasons why they were able to go from 4-13 to where they are right now.
Now, of course, one of the ways you do that is you set up your cap so where you have an extensive amount of funds.
Oh, they spent a boatload of money.
And they did.
Yeah. A lot of guaranteed money. Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but there were 6 high-caliber veteran free agents that they brought in during this offseason who were legit players.
Yeah.
I mean, legit guys. And quite frankly, Milton Williams wasn't even available last night. He's injured.
Correct.
How about that?
And he's one of the guys they spent big money on. Yeah.
I thought he was the number one defensive tackle on the market.
Well, they spent, I believe it was about $200 million in guaranteed money. But I know
it was huge.
Stephon Diggs, okay, 80% completion rate between him and Drake May
Now, to be fair about Diggs, right?
Yeah.
He had the horrible injury.
Correct, with the Texans.
Right. Yeah. Houston was like, okay, we're not dealing with that. And to New England's credit, they rolled the dice on that one. Because there was no way to tell. And quite frankly, he's not the Stephon Diggs that he was before the injury. He's definitely not the same caliber of player, but they've certainly gotten a good version of him. Not a great version, but a good version.
Well, he's a great veteran wide receiver to give a young quarterback who can make the big catches and help move the chains. So I think that's what he services. Harold Landry, who we brought up earlier in the program.
Oh, it's one of Vrabel's guys from Tennessee.
Yep. Robert Spillane, who they brought up from the Steelers, linebacker. So he's helped
had a really good year, too.
Carlton Davis, who was all over the place last night. Boy, him and Christian Gonzalez, excellent tacklers, by the way, for cornerbacks.
Now, I've always been a Carlton Davis fan. I mean, he's been around this league now, good 7, 8 years, I think.
Yeah, he was with the Bucs.
Always been a good fan, big fan of his. But last night, he was terrific.
Yeah, the secondary overall, and that's the difference, by the way. When those guys are engaged in stopping the run and the short passing game, that's how you all of a sudden take your defense to another level. Morgan Moses at their right tackle position, veteran offensive lineman.
I always thought of him more as a journeyman, but he's certainly getting the job done right now. Look, isn't that kind of it's more than a coincidence. It's what happens is when you pay guys and you say, listen, you got to come in here and be the back of your football card, and they give you the back of their football card. You need to get what you paid for, or if you're lucky, more than what you paid for. Not one of these guys that you mentioned have they come up short and given them less than what the Patriots paid for. Every guy gave him what they were supposed to give him.
And then some. Kyrus Tonga, who didn't play last night, defensive lineman. He's another guy that has made an impact. Jalen Hawkins, who you brought up earlier at the safety. Kayvon Chason, who was tied with Landry for the team lead in sacks.
6.5 apiece coming in.
Entering last night. So all of these guys, some of them are big names, some of them are compliments.
Right, Chason had been considered a bust until this year.
Correct. But you know what? We've seen that. How many times where a guy doesn't pan out with his originally drafted team, he goes elsewhere, all of a sudden it's a nice fit. Plus, Vrabel even talked about Durden, who was with the Giants last night in his press conference.
I saw the comment. I saw the comment.
So, yeah, they certainly hit. Though, just real quick, I would not compare the Patriots and the Giants, though, because New England has been pretty steady with the exception of the 2 4-13 seasons in back-to-back years. So the Giants have gone lengthier with issues.
Yes.
I don't think they're in the same boat. New England could be utilized as a mirror image in terms of, okay, this is what you need to do to get a turnaround accomplished, but New England, they didn't go through as long as the Giants have been in terms of trying to get this on the right track and the right page. So I don't know if that's an ideal comparison, both of the organizations from that standpoint. Let's head back to the phone lines. Let's check in with Marcus in California. Marcus, welcome aboard. What do you got for us?
Hey, I just wanted to say, man, that everything looks so much better now that Daboll got fired. The team is doing so good. Man, it's just become unbearable to watch. There is a deep-rooted incompetence in that building. I don't even really have much more to say other than I hope that, next year's better. A bunch of first-round picks not playing up to their potential. You got a staff that can't get anything out of anybody. You got Mike Kafka, who says he's going to come in and be the great discipliner, but you bench Abdul Carter when Kayvon's not playing. And then what happened? 17 points in the first quarter. We weren't getting blown out 30-7 in a first half when Daboll was here. The right move would have been to fire him at the end of the season instead of turning the Giants into a circus. And I feel like the players are very upset that Daboll's gone and they quit on the team. So I just hope that we get somebody in there that knows what they're doing, and next year we should be good. There's no football players. There's better athletes, but there's no 2 football players like Jackson Dart and Cam Scatabo, and they must be protected at all costs. So I think you got to get rid of everybody. And I hope everybody makes it out of the season healthy. Thanks, guys.
All right, Marcus. I could have sworn he started off saying that things look better without Daboll and then went the complete opposite direction. But maybe I'm hearing things which didn't necessarily add up.
No, he was being a wise guy.
Okay, yeah, because I picked up on that. I was like, I don't really understand where we're going with this. But that's a whole other story. We need another show to explain that. Let's go back to the phone lines. Marvin is in Delaware. What's happening, Coach Marvin?
How you doing, guys?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
I used to say this every year, and I'm saying it again, and I see it. The Giants have 3 people in that locker room that's causing this problem, and those 3 people are me, myself, and I. And when those 3 people come in the locker room, you're gonna have issues, and they do definitely have issues. Last night, I'm with Paul. They got hammered, and they couldn't even recover from that. The mistakes that they were making. The guy that ran a 94-yard punt back, there was no one around him. I think he didn't even get touched or anybody got close to him.
Yeah.
I think
Marcus
31,
Jones.
What was that?
No, Marcus Jones was the player that returned the punt that you're referring to.
Yeah. But the player that 31, I think it's Jones for the Giants, whoever is 31 for the Giants.
Nick Jones. Backup slot.
Past the punter. I meant the punt returner. Mm-hmm. He was behind him, and it was just crazy.
Coach, to be fair, those special teams for most of the season, they've been really pretty darn good. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah. The kicking situation has been kind of weird because of the injuries and everything else. But in terms of the kick coverage and the kick returns, the Giants have had a strong season there. That's not one unit that we really want to pick on. They're entitled to have a really bad day, and they did have a really bad day. This was a total collapse of the special teams unit. No question about that. But for most of the season, they've been really darn good.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just talking about last night because last night it was like clownish type of special teams last night. There was a time I seen Banks running behind the kick return. He wasn't in front of them blocking. He was behind them. It was the weirdest thing I ever seen. And then we have a kicker who actually, he kind of looked like he kicked the ground, but he was trying to stop himself from kicking, which becomes clownish. It just, I mean, my phone was blowing up.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Kafka, after the game, mentioned from his perspective, he thought the exchange wasn't as clean as it should have been, and that's why Koo sort of held up because he didn't think that Gillen was going to put it in time, and then obviously that's what led to a very awkward exchange. There's no doubt about it. I don't think any of us have seen that in the history of the National Football League until last night. Yeah.
I just saw it on Matt McAfee. He just went over it. What happened is when he laid the kick down, when he laid the ball down, the point on the ground slipped, just as he was going in motion to kick it. So the ball kind of tilted underneath.
Yep.
And he thought it was going to be a fire drill, and that's why he kind of tried to stop himself from kicking it. So as I looked at it just a few minutes ago, it looks like it's not that he kicked the ground. He tried to stop himself from kicking.
Yep.
My last part is the Patriots tried to punish them, and Dart have to understand. People are watching him. I hear people talking stupid stuff. Oh, he's wearing a necklace. He got this. He think he has this swag, and how he's coming off. When those guys start talking that way from the other team, you better be aware they're aware of you, and they're coming to get you. Because if a deer keeps running around lions, eventually he's going to get eaten. And we've seen this with Carson Wentz. We've seen this with Luck. Michael Vick went through this a little bit. These guys on the defensive end, these are not high school dudes, and these are not college guys. College guys don't have as many of these types of players on the defense. High school definitely don't have that many guys. So if he's looking at it like I did this in my high school and college years, you're going to learn the hard way. And there's no way we're fighting guys for hitting him legally. Everything that happened on that play was Dart's fault. The hit was his fault. The fighting was his fault. And at the end, he says, I don't care. I'm going to play it the way I play it. And that's going to be fine. But I don't think he's going to last. I really don't. I had quarterbacks on lower levels, and I've seen them take hits. And I tell you better get your butt down because those guys, they are hunting. And you better be aware that they're hunting. And he just saw his boy get hurt a few weeks ago.
Scatterbo. But, I mean, that's a completely different play, though. I don't know if that's comparable from that standpoint.
Lance, you can't cut me off today.
I'm not, Coach, I'm not cutting you off. We were just jumping in. I just don't think that's a fair comparison. That's all I was pointing out.
The comparison is not the hit. The comparison is that when you run out there, you are in danger every time you're out there. I'm not saying they're the same hit. I'm saying that they are hunting you.
Well, I mean, once again, you're jumping into the heads of the opposition. That may be true for some, and we'll let you go on that note. I don't know if it's necessarily...
No, my man. You don't know who I am. No. You ain't never know who I dealt with in my life.
Marvin, I'm not. True. You're getting very. You're making this a battle royale. I'm not fighting back. Okay. I'm just saying that you're jumping.
I'm gonna cut my call short.
Okay, I'm not trying to get into a battle royale with you. I'm just saying you're jumping into the head of most of the players, and I don't know if that's a fair assumption. Is what I'm saying. That's all. What? I'm not, but that doesn't make any of us right or wrong. It's just a different perspective. That's what it is. You're looking to be the end-all, be-all, and that's not how conversation goes all the time. That's all.
I'll tell you this. When I was coaching, I made them hunt.
Okay, and your perspective is allowed.
You know what?
That's fine.
When somebody that played is on the show, I'm calling, and I'm going to ask them, do any of their players hunt? You're speaking for all players.
I'm not speaking for all. I'm just saying that it'd be ill-informed to label everybody under that bridge. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
On the defensive line, on the defensive side of the ball, when a quarterback is running They are hunting, and that hit was a hunt.
Well,
you know,
was
Coach,
not a nice hit.
Coach, to your point, let's address the specific play because I think moving forward, the better idea is to discuss how he could have better handled the situation. It's a 2nd and 13, and Dart has to scramble out of the pocket and run up the right sideline. Now, I don't know what his field of vision was. Did he see the linebacker coming in horizontally? I hope that he would have seen him with his peripheral vision, because had he done that, the perhaps wise play, and I'll use wise as the adjective, the wise play is it's a 2nd and 13. Maybe the wise play is go 12 yards and step out of bounds.
which is what we talked about earlier.
And not get hit, forego the extra yard, make it a 3rd and 1, and live for another play, and don't take the risk of getting yourself popped, whether illegally or legally. That's one less hit you have to take if you can just turn yourself out of bounds 1 yard in front of the marker. And that's the kind of thing I expect that suspect you're trying to allude to, right, Coach?
Paul, you hit it on the nose. You gave it a different perspective. You know what you
I'm just describing the play because I think that's the easiest way to do it. But describe the play and how would you like to see it better done?
Well, I looked at the play not too long ago. I'm watching on McAfee, and you're right. Maybe the way it looked like he could, because there was I think it was Wandell in front of two
Patriot. Yes, absolutely.
He was in between Dart,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe Dart didn't see him.
I don't know.
But,
I don't know.
I don't know either. But as I'm coaching, I'm always saying, and you've heard this, you got to keep your head on the swivel when you're playing out here.
You do.
Because
Absolutely.
people are running everywhere, and they're coming from every angle. But you may have a point there, which I can understand. I can understand that point. But to just knock my vision of what I see and what I experience and have dealt with people that I dealt with, and to say, oh, you're just hallucinating. That's not everybody. That's not true, and that's not right to do.
Well, that wasn't said, Marvin. In fairness, that we weren't generalizing. Well, I think you're misclassifying that, and appreciate the phone call. We'll let you go on that note. We were not telling you that you were hallucinating. Those words never came out of my mouth. I simply said that I think it's unfair to classify that all defensive players are hunting quarterbacks when they're out in the open field. I just don't think that's a fair classification, and I'll bring my perspective from working shows and talking to a lot of former defensive players and having conversations on and off the air that has never come up, that they have said when a quarterback takes off and runs, they always had the mindset to go hunting after them. So that's the perspective that I'm coming from. You're entitled to your perspective. I'm entitled to my perspective. There's no right or wrong answer. There's some of you call up and you want to have like an end-all, be-all judgment of, okay, he's right, he's wrong. That's not how dialogue and conversation goes. So that's where I was coming from. I don't think it was personal at all. If you want to take it that way, that's fine. But that's not how I was coming from. Let's head back to the phone lines. Lou is in Pennsylvania. Lou, welcome aboard. What do you got for us?
Hey, guys. I just want to touch on what Coach Marvin said. His perspective was wrong because he classified the Jackson Dart and the Cam Scatterbo hit as the same thing, which is two different things. Anyway.
Yep.
My question I wanted to ask, with the cornerbacks, it seems like, I know we're not playing, it's not press coverage, but it seems like when they giving them a free release, and not only they give them a free release, as soon as the ball is set, they drop back 5 yards or 10 yards in coverage, and the receivers just go and run a curl route and get a pass. Am I seeing that wrong, or that happens a lot with this team? It happened in Dallas in the beginning of the season when
I know.
The tight end went in the middle to catch the in the middle of the field. It seems like whatever they taught, it's press coverage.
We had this conversation, at least I did, with Jonathan on one of the shows last week. I invite you to go back and take a listen to that one. There is, you don't have to play press coverage and jam a guy at the line in order to be 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and then rerouting him. There are different ways to do that. It's not always the same. And I do agree with you that over the last 2 years, the Giants have allowed way too many free releases and not done enough to impede, reroute receivers, and throw off the timing of the other team's passing game. In general, I totally agree with what you're saying. And so did Jonathan. Specifically last night, look, I got back at 4 a.m. in the morning. I have not rewatched the game tape yet, okay? I'm being perfectly honest with you. I will pick this thing apart play by play within the next 24 hours. But so I'm not going to comment any further on last night's game about that particular aspect of it.
I just have one more thing to say.
Yeah, real quick.
And sometimes I tell my kids, hey, don't do this, you're going to get hurt. Sometimes you have to let them get hurt to understand. After Dart had the interview after the game, and somebody asked, why don't you run out of bounds? And his comment was, it's football, you're going to get hit. Yes, that's a given. But sometimes you just have to run out of bounds. He has to get hurt, and that's the only way he's going to understand the team needs him more on the field than injured off the field. He's young, and until he understands that, it will never change. Unfortunately, he has that mindset, but he has to get hurt. And it hurts me to say it. It sucks, but it's never going to change. All right, guys, I'll listen to the comments off the air. Thank you very much.
You got it. Appreciate the phone call. Well, and that's why I brought up what he had mentioned in the press conference, whether or not, God forbid, he has to get hurt. I mean, you could argue he already has dealt with a concussion. So I'm sure that at least has served as a reminder. But it's a little bit different, once again, when it's the old story when Joe Burrow, not to get off topic, was asked about why is he coming back on the field, Paul, to play in the last game, when he could pretty much just say, take the rest of the season off, right? The Bengals, it's hard for them to make the playoffs. He said, I'm a football player. I'm paid to play football, okay? It's routine. So it's the same thing with Dart. His routine has been he's going to fight for the extra yardage, and it's hard to reprogram, I guess is what I'm getting, a player to think differently when they've been doing it this way for a very long period of time.
Jim Brown used to talk about Franco Harris the same way, right? He would criticize Franco for avoiding hits and maybe getting out of bounds. And Franco was like, okay, well, guess what? I've lasted a long time in this league. I've won championships, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. So different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to leave it at that. We've got a press conference coming up in a little bit as Joe Shane will be speaking with reporters as the Giants prepare for the bye week. So we'll have full coverage coming up on Giants.com. And it's important to note we are going to take a brief hiatus here on Big Blue Kickoff Live for the remainder of the week with the team on bye and the office closed. So we'll be back up and running on Monday of next week with the next new episode. So I just want everybody to be alert in terms of the programming for the next few days. With that being said, certainly appreciate everybody for tuning in to Big Blue Kickoff Live. It's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. We're broadcasting from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow, signing off here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Monday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.